I even have my earphones.
All right, welcome to this evening meeting of the Early Childhood Subcommittee. Thank you, colleagues, for joining here for a brief meeting this evening after our long day of bill hearings. We just have two bills on the agenda today. One's a local bill that we'll be voting on. The other bill that's on our agenda is just for discussion tonight. So let's start with HB 222, which is a Frederick County local bill. Alistair, can you remind all what this bill is?
Yes, happily. So under broad state law, students are forbidden from selling coffee. That was passed in 2018, and the General Assembly made an exception for students in Baltimore County if they had been selling coffee prior to 2018. Frederick also has a program that is organized by students with individualized education programs who sell coffee, and they too would like to be exempt from the statewide prohibition. So they put this bill in front of us. We passed it in 2021, and both Frederick and Baltimore County have signed off on the bill.
Is there any questions or discussion on this bill?
I move favorable on this.
Yeah,
bill.
well, second, but I do have a point for discussion.
Go ahead, Delegate Wilkins.
Yes, I was just wondering why we don't just repeal the entire prohibition and leave it to the counties to decide what they'd like to do, because I know we've been talking about this for 7 years since I've been here, and we just continually have counties or additional requests in this area.
I think that's a fair point. I guess the question would be, if we wanted to take action on that this year, does it jeopardize Frederick County's ability to do something in the meantime, as opposed to maybe coming back with a bill for next year? But I too am sympathetic on that issue of not doing this county by county. Okay, so not hearing any other debate on the bill, I think we'll just go ahead and vote on this one, but our vice chair's point is very well taken. So all those in favor of HB 222, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that was unanimous. Thank you, colleagues, for that. So the other bill that's on our agenda for tonight is HB 5. And Alistair can just give us a summary of what that bill is. And again, we're not voting on this one tonight. This is for discussion.
Absolutely. So HB 5 requires that over the next 5 years, each county board install a communication board on public school playgrounds. And it defines a communication board as a device that displays photos, symbols, or illustrations to enable individuals with limited language skills to express themselves and communicate.
Oh my God. I'm gonna turn it back on.
All right. Sarah's put me in the dark.
So you're unmuted, sir.
He knows he's getting kicked out of the Ways and Means Committee room, I believe. So Delegate Griffith, go ahead.
Sure. And again, I know this is an area I have my own biases towards because of the situation. My son having a nonverbal special needs son. I certainly support this. I support it in its drafted form. I strongly disagree with the physical note. As politicians, we all create large signs that get our messages out for very, very low cost. If this bill needs to be more prescriptive on what the sign needs to be to make sure we're significantly limiting that cost, I certainly support that. So people that are making and installing these signs are not interpreting our will, but understanding this is what we're looking for. We're looking for $50, $100 sign posted somewhere in the playground. So if a kid's in distress or needs to communicate, can use these boards. So that's just my position on it. I think it's a great bill, and it's certainly something we would take advantage of, and families and special needs community that I occupy would take advantage of.
Thank you. Delegate Wilkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am generally supportive of this bill as well. I do want to point out written testimony from Disability Rights Maryland that included some specifics that the sign should have, including making sure it's accessible to all students with disabilities, and making sure there are certain height requirements so that students are actually able to physically use it, making sure it's accessible to those who are visually impaired. And so I do think we have to include some specifics to make sure that it's inclusive. And I'll just point everyone to that testimony. I also think that for us to do this statewide, it feels like a lot at once on our schools. I would love to see this start in a particular jurisdiction, fix some potential hiccups, see how it works, and then potentially expand it statewide. I think it should just start off smaller as a pilot program.
Thank you for your input as well. I'll say I have some similar thoughts on this one, and the reason I wanted to discuss it tonight is I do see the need for this legislation, and especially for schools where we know, and the school knows that there is a student who has a need for the sign, and if we could find some appropriate way to kind of target where this starts out at. Alistair and I have had some conversations on that front, but haven't quite settled on what the right approach is. So I'll say to subcommittee members, if you have thoughts in that area, happy to talk tonight or offline at some point. Delegate Griffith.
Just that end, if it is the will of the subcommittee to make it a pilot program, does it have to be limited to one jurisdiction? Because I certainly think the sponsor's jurisdiction should be represented in this, and I would certainly love Harford County to maybe also be included in that. At least maybe starting with 2 jurisdictions in this case, or whatever the case may be. Just my thoughts, but I certainly think if that's the will of the subcommittee, the sponsors county or jurisdiction should be prioritized.
Thank you for that, Delegate Ebersol.
Thank you. Hold on. Am I on? Yep. So yes, I do think if we go to jurisdictions, since it's a mandate, we might be wise to take it to their delegations to look at, to make sure, because we're mandating an expense. I did hear $100 a sign. I don't recall if anybody was able to verify that or if that's an estimate. And also, how many parks are there where they would have to be? So I don't want to slow it down too much because it's a nice idea to have a pilot. But if we're going to mandate the county to do something, probably should have positive indication from their delegation.
Agreed, Delegate Ebersol. I'll say the fiscal note, I did my own research on this, and the fiscal note was putting the sign costs at, I think, like $800 to $2,000 per sign. And just from doing a little bit of internet research, that does seem to be what I was finding from the various vendors that were coming up. I think to the Delegate Wilkins' earlier point about what's included on those signs, that is another piece where I think some of the potential amendment language we've gotten has been fairly prescriptive. I'm not sure that there are signs that meet all of those requirements, but I think certainly in terms of specifying about the installation height needs to be accessible, that we can definitely get into. That's something that the school district would be able to control. But in terms of sign content, that might be a concern. Other thoughts on this bill tonight? Okay, seeing none, we're going to keep working on this one. I thank you all for staying on a little late here this evening.